The topic of this debate is whether fighting poverty or fighting climate change should take precedence when in conflict. The affirmative debater has proposed the criterion of relative urgency and immediacy as the main determinant of which issue should be prioritized. But both poverty and climate change are immediate and urgent issues that require our attention, and they are not mutually exclusive but interconnected. I am going to first analyze the criterion proposed by the affirmative, then offer some arguments about why both poverty and climate change need to be simultaneously confronted with robust policies, and then respond to some case arguments. First, I would like to challenge the criterion proposed by the affirmative debater, which is based on the relative urgency and immediacy of poverty and climate change. This criterion is problematic because it fails to take into account the interlinkages between the two issues. Studies, such as the one published in the journal Nature Climate Change in 2017, have shown that poverty and climate change are deeply interconnected and that people living in poverty are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. Therefore, addressing poverty without addressing the root causes of poverty, such as extreme weather events and resource scarcity, which are caused by climate change, will not be effective in the long run. An alternative criterion that should be considered is intersectionality. Intersectionality, as defined by Kimberly Crenshaw, is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Therefore, the burden for the affirmative is to show that addressing poverty first is a better way to address the intersectional issues of these problems than trying to address both equally. Next, my argument is that policies that are designed to simultaneously address poverty and climate change are more effective than those that prioritize poverty reduction. One notable example is the Grameen Bank's Climate Change and Community Development Program in Bangladesh. The program, which was launched in 2008, focuses on providing small loans to low-income communities in rural areas to support sustainable livelihoods and improve resilience to climate change. But the program provides small loans to communities to invest in solar home systems, biogas plants, and other clean energy technologies. By switching to clean energy, these communities are able to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels, which helps to mitigate climate change. Additionally, the clean energy also improves the living conditions for these communities by providing access to electricity for lighting and other basic needs. The program has provided clean energy to over 1.5 million households and has helped to improve the livelihoods of over 7 million people in Bangladesh. The program has also helped to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 2 million tons of CO2 per year. This example is a case in point that policies which are designed with intersectionality in mind have proven successful. If these loans prioritized poverty reduction over combating climate change, we would not have seen some benefits, like greenhouse gas emissions reduction. Last, I would like to refute the arguments put forward by the affirmative debater in their speech. The affirmative debater argues that combating poverty should take precedence over combating climate change because poverty is an immediate and urgent problem that affects the lives of millions of people around the world, whereas climate change is a long-term problem that may not have significant impacts for decades or even centuries. However, this argument fails to take into account the interlinkages between poverty and climate change. Studies, such as the one published in the journal Nature Climate Change in 2017, have shown that poverty and climate change are deeply interconnected and that people living in poverty are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. For example, climate change exacerbates poverty by increasing food insecurity, reducing access to clean water, and causing displacement and loss of livelihoods. Therefore, addressing poverty without addressing the root causes of poverty, such as extreme weather events and resource scarcity, which are caused by climate change, will not be effective in the long run. Furthermore, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has emphasized that the implementation of poverty reduction and sustainable development policies is essential to tackle the impacts of climate change and to help the most vulnerable communities. Therefore, it is important to address poverty and climate change together, as they are mutually reinforcing and not mutually exclusive. The affirmative debater also argues that government spending on combating climate change slows poverty reduction efforts. However, this argument is not supported by evidence. In fact, Studies have shown that investing in clean energy and sustainable development can have multiple benefits, including not only improving the lives of people living in poverty but also reducing greenhouse gas emissions and creating jobs. Another argument made by the affirmative debater is that Bjorn Lomborg's research supports the idea that government spending on combating climate change slows poverty reduction efforts. However, as I have previously pointed out, Bjorn Lomborg's views on climate change have been widely criticized by the scientific and academic community for being controversial, cherry-picking data, and using flawed methodologies. Therefore, it is not appropriate to use his research as evidence in this debate. In conclusion, the affirmative debater's argument that combating poverty should take precedence over combating climate change is problematic because it fails to take into account the interlinkages between poverty and climate change. Studies have shown that poverty and climate change are deeply interconnected, and that addressing poverty without addressing climate results in short-sighted and ineffective